Hey, what's going on everyone? My name is Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel, where you'll find some of the most fair and honest game reviews out here. And today, we're diving back into the Mortal Kombat franchise once again with a spin-off title, Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks for the PlayStation 2. It's also available for the Xbox. Now, many people seem to love this game and have given it high praise, but is it actually that good, or is it actually terrible? When it comes to spin-off games, the Mortal Kombat series doesn't always have the best luck. We've gotten duds like MK Mythology Sub-Zero and Mortal Kombat Special Forces. It felt like every time the series tried to do something different, it would end up a disaster. But third time's a charm with the release of a 2005 game for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks is an action-adventure game that lets you control Liu Kang and Kung Lao to battle through legions of enemies in the MK universe. The game takes place during the time of Mortal Kombat 2, with many characters from that game making an appearance. For many, this was the most successful Mortal Kombat spin-off, and was even going to have a sequel called Mortal Kombat Fire and Ice. That game would have starred Scorpion and Sub-Zero as the main characters, but Midway had financial troubles at the time and the game was never released. The story of Shaolin Monks feels like an overextension of the plot from MK2, with key events of that story being expanded upon or shown a little differently. The sorcerer Shang Tsung is trying to lure the warriors of Earthrealm into Outworld, where they would face him at his true power and an even bigger threat, Shao Kahn. It's up to Liu Kang and Kung Lao to defeat Outworld's warriors and stop Shang Tsung before all is lost. If you're into the lore of Mortal Kombat, there's a lot in here to connect the dots between games. But for the average fan, it might be way too much to follow. Luckily, the things that you really came here for, like the gore and the craziness of the series, is still here.
Master Raiden.
Kung Lao, Liu Kang. I have discovered that Shang Tsung has somehow used the Elder God's magic boundaries to make Outworld vulnerable.
I do not understand.
So this story is a little bit goofy. If you're already into Mortal Kombat as is, you'll be totally fine and you'll feel right at home. But for anybody else that wants more layers to their plot in video games or isn't really into Mortal Kombat as is or into the lore, you're probably not going to like this. You're probably not going to feel it too much or not going to be really your jam because there's so many things that are happening, especially referencing other games from throughout the franchise, that if you don't already get them or know a little bit about Mortal Kombat, you'll be kind of lost or you just won't care. Putting that to the side, however, if you are into Mortal Kombat, or at least know a little bit about it, there's all these different things from throughout the franchise that you'll appreciate, or at least being given subtle nods. I love seeing all the classic characters from MK2, but there's even other characters from other games like Mortal Kombat 3 and even later in the franchise, which I think is pretty cool because you not only get like little side quests where you get to engage or even fight certain characters, which is pretty awesome, including characters like Kano, who was in Mortal Kombat 2, but not in a playable fashion. He appears on the Shao Kahn stage, but you get a full side quest and boss fight with him, which is pretty darn cool. But then there's other things like some of the nods to the hidden characters, like Reptile, obviously, like Smoke, like Jade, like Noob Saibot. There's all these little things. They even go even deeper where they start bringing in characters like Cabal or the Black Dragon and the Red Dragon. There's a lot of stuff in here. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but again, if you're into Mortal Kombat, you'll appreciate this stuff because the series always had a reverence for its lore and it has a little bit of fun with it. That being said, however, I will say that I do wish that there was a little bit of variation with the ending of the story, or at least how the story progresses, because you have two playable characters, and this game does have co-op, but if you're playing alone, you get to choose one or the other, and pretty much the plot and the story is the exact same. There is no differences between the two characters, whether you finish the game with Liu Kang or Kung Lao. I would have loved to have at least seen a little bit of variation, maybe changes in dialogue or other cutscenes, stuff like that that adds a little bit more flavor to the experience. I know it's wishful thinking, it's probably a little bit nitpicky, but there are other games out there that do something similar to this that add stuff like that, and I would have appreciated it because I feel like the game and the series as a whole would have had a lot of fun with it. Alright, plot and everything else to the side, let's talk gameplay because that's where Mortal Kombat really shines throughout the entire franchise. So is Shaolin Monks any good, or is it just, just a dud? Or is it like garbage like these other side games? Shaolin Monks has you visiting multiple locations from Mortal Kombat 2, where you'll fight groups of enemies and engage in boss battles. It reminds me a little bit of the Power Stone games from Capcom, both with the camera perspective and how you move around the screen. However, this could get annoying because the camera could be placed either too far away or at a weird angle. Your sense of distance when jumping between platforms could get messed up. Speaking of which, you do a lot of platforming in this game in multiple places. I definitely think this was heavily influenced by Mythology Sub-Zero, with all of the obstacles and puzzles that are in there. Because of the camera, this could get tedious and a little frustrating. You'll probably end up failing a few times because of it. On top of that, things like enemy hitboxes and how far you get knocked back could be a little cheap, forcing you to repeat a puzzle or retread places that you've already been to multiple times. The challenge is definitely there, but it can often become annoying to play through. Now what about the fighting? This is Mortal Kombat after all. Is it any good? I'd say that the combat has a charm to it when fighting groups of enemies. You could attack in multiple directions and use many abilities to control the crowd. You get all the signature moves from previous MK games, and you can use environmental hazards around you to take out different enemies. This is typical of Mortal Kombat, because the gore can really go over the top in a fun way. Big combos lead to amazing attacks, along with a short cutscene of the infamous fatalities and brutalities that the series is known for. But everything changes when you reach the boss fights and it becomes a one-on-one battle against classic MK characters. I'll admit, needing to hold a lock-on button to focus on an enemy gets super annoying. I wish it was a toggle option instead of needing to hold it down. The fights themselves can be very difficult when bosses start to use crazy attacks with abilities that push you back very far or make them partially invincible. Other crazy battles have you fighting against some giant enemies that require a bit more finesse to bring them down. However, it's fun when you finally get to execute a finishing move once you complete the battles.
Finish him!
There are things in Shaolin Monks that I do appreciate, such as unlocking new moves through the experience. As you fight more enemies, you get to unlock like better versions of some of your signature moves and other abilities that you could find throughout the whole game. That stuff is pretty cool. I think that at some point towards the end, things become a little bit more obsolete, but I digress. But there's one thing that does bug me though, and it's because I was playing as a solo player in this game, even though I know most of this game is kind of geared towards co-op play. There's certain areas that are completely locked off that unless you have a second player with you, you cannot access throughout the experience. I wish there was a way or some sort of ability that allowed me to at least unlock that stuff if I decided to play solo, because without that, you won't be able to see any of that content unless you find another player. And I totally get it. That is the most optimal way to play Shaolin Monks, is with a second person for co-op. It's a whole lot more fun, but still, if I do decide to play a game like this solo and it does allow me to do so, there should at least be certain things there, or at least compromises, that allow me to see the entirety of the game without having to go through a whole bunch of other steps or try to figure out another thing that is outside of the game itself in order to see that content. Again, another nitpicky thing, some people might disagree with me on that, but it would have made sense for me if like all of a sudden I see those switches on the ground where you have to have another player. If maybe like at a certain point during the plot, I get some sort of ability to allow a Kung Lao or Liu Kang just to appear and like activate those switches with me, or maybe push like a certain heavy object onto that switch in order to access that content. A lot of it is like secret stuff and like little bonus things that probably push you a little bit further ahead. But once again, I feel like if they would have added something like that, it would have been so much better. It would have been a nice accent on the total experience as a solo player. One other thing I do want to touch on though, which is kind of unique to the series, especially during this era of Mortal Kombat, is all the extra content, because let's be real here, like there is no shortage of goodies and extra bonus stuff that these games have to offer. Now I will admit, I love seeing all the extra stuff that you could get in a Mortal Kombat game. You can always count on the devs to give you a ton of goodies to unlock, and Shaolin Monks is no exception. But it's definitely a lot slimmer than other Mortal Kombat games of that era. The game has multiple modes for you to try out, including 2-player co-op and a versus 1-on-1 mode where you could play as different characters that you run into during the main game. Finishing the story mode opens up a lot of goodies, including concept art and behind-the-scenes photos. You also have videos and promos of other Midway games from that time, which is pretty cool to see. A real highlight, however, is that you can unlock the ability to play as both Scorpion and Sub-Zero in the main game, both for solo and for co-op play. They have their own moves and upgrades too, which adds even more replay value to the experience. However, there is no alternate ending to the story when you complete it, which is a bummer. I would have liked to have seen that, since you get to play as 2 new characters throughout the whole game. If you're a longtime MK fan, you could also unlock a fully playable arcade version of Mortal Kombat 2. which, not gonna lie, is pretty dope. Bottom line, even though this isn't as beefy as other releases of the series of that era, it still has a solid amount of goodies to enjoy. There is honestly not a lot of stuff I could complain about with the extra content. If I did have to comment on one thing, however, I do wish that there was more playable characters in the versus one-on-one mode, because you run into all these different characters throughout the main game that you actually don't get to control or unlock for the other modes. To me, that's a little bit disappointing, because I know that Mortal Kombat prides itself on having large rosters and a ton of characters to play around with. Like, for example, you don't get to use Noob Saibot, you don't get to use Kano, you don't get to use Jade, you don't get to use Cabal, and you get to see these characters or fight them or they get involved in some form or fashion, but you never actually get to play as them in the other modes. So that's a little bit disappointing, but, you know, it's just another little nitpick from me. Outside of that, I don't have really a lot of other comments about the extra content. I still think it is pretty darn good with all the little goodies you can mess with. It's not as plentiful as previous like PlayStation 2 games, at least the ones I grew up with, like Deception or Armageddon, but that doesn't mean that it's not good. Like, there's still a good amount of stuff there for you to enjoy. And if you're a big MK fan, there's some cool things in there. And if you're not an MK fan, I guarantee that a lot of this stuff might get you to become a big fan of the series. With everything I've said up to now, does this MK spin-off finally break the losing streak? Can I recommend that you play through Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks on any platform? I would say yes. Even though I don't like the number of technical problems I ran into, I still think it's a fun time even if you're playing alone. However, I definitely feel you should grab a friend to play co-op with you for the most optimal experience. But either way, Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks has some good things going for it that definitely makes this the best spin-off game for the entire franchise to date. Not quite a flawless victory, but a good one nonetheless. And there you go, everyone. Those are my thoughts about Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. This game is pretty darn good. Despite little things that I complained about, it's still pretty darn good. It's been a long time since I've actually sat down and fully played through this, and I know a lot of people that love Mortal Kombat really praise this game and really dunk on like all the other side games, and it's understandable why, because this at least was doing some stuff that those other games weren't doing right, and it borrowed elements of them that was actually good and actually tried to make it something much more fun and much more interesting and engaging, and I appreciate that. I would have loved to get the sequel to this game that they were planning out and play as Scorpion and Sub-Zero. That would have been freaking sweet, and I'm pretty sure many of you out there agree with me, but alas, we haven't seen this game, or at least something like this game, in quite a while. There was talk about this getting an HD re-release on current consoles like PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, I think, at one point, but that kind of fell through. Maybe, you know, if we bug out Boone enough, maybe he'll actually re-release this game in some form, because I think that'll be kind of cool. Maybe with some online play? I don't know. I'm just saying. But either way, that's just my thoughts about Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. Let me know your own thoughts about this game down below in the comment section. Tell me, are you a big Mortal Kombat fan? Did you love Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks? What are some of your other favorite spin-off games? Whether you love them or hate them, which ones do you like playing through? What do you want to see from the Mortal Kombat series going forward? Because we've already had so many games up to this point. We're already up to MK12 coming down the line. So where else can the series go? Talk to me about that stuff down below in the comments section. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. I appreciate your support and I hope you enjoyed checking it out. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and don't forget to leave me a like on this video and post a comment down below too. It helps out the channel a ton. You could also join my Discord server via the link in the description box to come be part of the community we have there. Whether you agree or disagree with me, come chat about games with everybody in there. It's a lot of fun people that I know you'll get a kick out of. Hope to see you again soon. Peace out, and stay epic, everybody.